Greetings everyone. I hope all of you are doing well in these difficult times. Let us now start our Gita study with a opening prayer. This is on page 236 of this book, The Universal Prayers. This is the last one, the third one on that page. This is from a Sanskrit play called Hanuman Nataka, ascribed to Hanuman. It seems Hanuman wrote a play depicting Ramayana story, and this verse comes there. So let me chant. Om Yam Shaiva Samupasate Shiva iti Brahmeti Vedantino Bauddha Buddha iti Pramana Patavaha Karteti Nayayikaha Arhanityata Jaina Shasanarataha Karmeti Mimamsakaha Soyam no Vidadhatu Vanchita Phalam Trailokyanato Harihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Supreme Lord of the Universe, the remover of all evil, whom the devotees of Shiva worship as Shiva, the Vedantins as Brahman, the Buddhists as Buddha, the followers of the Nyaya philosophy who are well versed in logic as the agent, those devoted to the Jaina doctrines as Arhat, and the ritualists of the Mimamsa school as Karman, may He grant us all our heart's desires. Om peace. May there be peace and joy in our hearts. May there be peace and harmony amongst all the beings. No hatred, no ill will. May everyone realize what is noble and auspicious and dharmic and follow accordingly. May there be peace in everybody's heart. May no one be subject to misery. Om peace, peace, peace in nature. Last time we began chapter 9. Chapter 9 is a very interesting and relatively easy chapter. There is not much complicated philosophy or anything, except 2 verses in the beginning. Those are kind of difficult to understand. We'll try our best. The first 3 verses, they are simply encouragement to Arjuna to become interested in this subject. They extol, the first 3 verses extol the glory of this knowledge. Rajavidya, Rajaguhya Yogaha, that's the name of this chapter. The first three verses are simply a description of the importance of this topic. The idea being that unless you realize the importance of the topic and become deeply interested in studying it, you will not pay 100% attention. So that is probably the idea. So these 3 verses are easy. First one we did last time. We will do the from the beginning. First one. Here, first verse. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshyamyanasuyave jnanam nijnana sahitam yajñatva mokshase shubhat. The Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, Idam Pravakshyami. I'm going to explain this to you. Idam means this. What is this? Jnanam. The word jnanam comes in the second line. Idam jnanam. This knowledge I'm going to explain to me. And what kind of knowledge? Guhyatamam. Guhya means secret. Guhyatamam means most secret. When you see the suffix tama, it is superlative degree. Guhyatamam, most secret. Not in the ordinary sense. It is not secret. This book is available in almost all languages, and to anybody you can buy a Gita book. So you can read Gita. That way it is not hidden from anybody. But in what way it is secret? Secret is, it makes no sense to a person who is not prepared to study it. It remains a secret to those who are not ready for this knowledge. So there must have been preparation to study the Bhagavad Gita or any scripture. Unless that preparation is done, you can read the books, they are available, but it will not make an impact. We will not be able to understand the deeper meaning of the text. So in that sense, it is mysterious. You can call it mysterious. Guhyatamam. It remains a mystery to those who are not prepared. Guhyatamam. Anasuya way to you who has no jealousy. Asuya means jealousy. Arjuna was Anasuya. He didn't have any jealousy. Jnanam. Idam jnanam. This knowledge. Vijnana sahitam. Along with vijnana. Last time we saw the difference between jnana and vijnana. Vijnana means realization and experience. Jnana means simply knowing, knowledge. But that is not enough. It is required, but not enough. What is important is we should have vijnana, we should experience it. Otherwise, merely jnana, having jnana is good, but not enough. Necessary, but not sufficient. Vijnana sahitam anubhava yuktam, Shankara says. This jnana is, what kind of jnana it is? It is Brahma jnanam. Earlier, in the 7th chapter we saw Vasudevaha sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. A person who is fully convinced that God, Vasudeva, is all in all. Vasudeva does not mean only Krishna, Vasudeva's son. Vasudeva means supreme reality. So a person who has full conviction that the only thing that really is important, that matters, is God or Brahman. All other worldly things are of secondary nature. If they are there, it is okay. If they are not there, it is okay. So that kind of conviction if a person has, then he has the preparation to benefit from the study of this chapter. Vijnana sahitam anubhava yuktam yajñātva, by knowing which, if you know this knowledge, that he is going to explain in this chapter, yajñātva, by knowing which, ashubhat mokshase, you will become free from evil. Ashubha means evil. Shubha means auspicious, good. Ashubhat mokshase, you will become free from evil for all time to come, permanently. Once you have the knowledge, then we won't go back to the domain of ignorance. Unlike other branches of knowledge, you may study something, but you may forget it, or the subject itself may change. As new discoveries are made in scientific research, some things become obsolete, replaced by better understanding. That does not happen here. This is called avyaya. Once this knowledge is gained, that is permanent. There is no more going back into the realm of ignorance. Ashubhat, samsara bandhanat. Shankara says samsara bandhana. what you will become free, moksha say, from the worldly life. Worldly life is full of suffering, as is on the previous chapter. Chapter 8, sloka number 15, Sri Krishna called this world Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. Himself, the Lord who made this world, who runs this world, he himself says that this world is Dukkhalaya, house of misery. Ashashvatam, everything is temporary, everything changes. You cannot depend upon anything, you cannot assume anything will be there tomorrow. Shobhavaha, today it is there, tomorrow it may not be there. That kind of world. We will escape from the sufferings, miseries of this worldly life. Samsara bandhanat means, samsara means the cycle of transmigration, birth and death, and all suffering in between. Birth and then disease, old age, death, and all other kinds of problems in between birth and death. That will become free from that permanently. That is the benefit of this knowledge. So he is explaining the glory, the importance of this knowledge, because we have to be convinced that this is really worthwhile studying. Then we will put our mind to it. He is creating interest in Arjuna's mind. The next two verses are similar. They are easy. Second verse. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitramidamuttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartumavyayam. There's a little bit of exaggeration here. You say Susukham means it's easy to understand. It is not so easy. But if you frighten a person is very difficult, then you won't be able to put in the interest, will get the interest to study it. No, it's easy, it's not that difficult. Everybody can understand. Like that is a little bit of creating interest in the subject. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitramidamuttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartumavyayam. It is the sovereign science, Raja Vidya, royal science. Among all the branches of knowledge, this is the highest kind of knowledge. Then what are the other branches of knowledge? Earlier we saw two major branches of knowledge are there. What are they? Paravidya, Aparavidya. That you remember. Aparavidya means all these subjects we study in schools, universities, and academic institutions. So all the social sciences, all the sciences and technologies, and all the humanities, literature, everything, all branches of science and technology, all branches of social sciences, everything, they all come under one category called Apara Vidya. Apara means not supreme, para means supreme. They have a place in life. Devidye veditavye parachaiva aparacha, the Upanishad says. Mundaka Upanishad says, both branches of knowledge have to be studied for a meaningful life. You can't neglect Apara Vidya. Although Apara Vidya provides limited benefit, but necessary. Unless a person is educated in some branch, then he will not be able to lead a very successful life. Nowadays, a college degree is a minimum. It's not enough, but at least without a college degree, what kind of job can one get? So like that, Apara Vidya has a place in human life. It has to be studied. Veditavya, Veditavya, Paravidya, Aparavidya. But that is not enough. Paravidya has to be known also. What is the Paravidya? What does it teach? Aparavidya, we know what it teaches. History, geography, mathematics, science, logic, grammar, all the technologies, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, all those, astronomy, astrophysics, space travel, all those things, poetry, literature, that is, we know. But what is Paravidya? What does it teach? The Upanishad says, Mundaka Upanishad says, Parayaya tadaksharamadigamyate. Paravidya is that branch of knowledge, that knowledge by which the supreme reality Brahman, imperishable Brahman is known. That is Brahma Vidya, Atma Jnana, knowledge of the self. That you don't study in the Aparavidya branches. You can study psychology, which studies the nature and function of the mind, etc. Medical sciences, we study the body and its problems and solutions. But no branch teaches Paravidya, self-knowledge. That the word, Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, that is studied in an academic way, but not as a seeker. Like any other subject, they will study philosophy also, metaphysics, philosophy, they study, they write books and present papers in conferences, and those things are done as an academic discipline, not for sadhana, seeking knowledge of God, knowledge of the self. So Paravidya, that is Rajavidya, the king of all knowledges. The most important of all branches of knowledge is Rajavidya, Paravidya. Rajaguhyam. Guhyam means, as we saw before, mysterious. Cannot be understood unless preparation is made, has been made. Rajaguhyam, with royal secret. Idam uttamam pavitram. This knowledge is uttamam, the best knowledge. Pavitram, the purest knowledge, that means it purifies the person's mind. If a person studies some other Aparavidya branch, chemistry or mathematics or botany or history, that may not have any impact on the person's character. It may or may not. There may be a very highly qualified professor, but he may, in personal life, it may not be very clean. That is possible. It has no impact on the person's inner life. It provides livelihood, but inner life does not necessarily change if you study Aparavidya. But Paravidya is not like that. Pavitram, it purifies the mind. Purity of mind is the prerequisite for God realization, self-realization. It paves the way, this knowledge paves the way for self-knowledge, Atma Jnana, by purifying the mind. If you study this knowledge of the self, all the impurities of the mind will go away, paving the way for ultimate realization. Pavitram idam uttamam, the best knowledge. Pratyaksha-avagamam. Pratyaksha means directly, personally, directly. Avagamam is its apprehension, its understanding is immediate. There is no delay. There is nothing that prevents realization once you have this self-knowledge. It can be experienced personally. Other branches of knowledge need not be experienced personally. Supposing a person studies ancient history, it's all theoretical knowledge. What happened many centuries ago, who was ruling what kingdom. There is no personal experience there. Some information you read in the books and you talk about it. There is nothing personal. It does not affect the person's inner life. Subjects like that. But not this is Pratyaksha-avagamam. It directly affects and purifies the person's mind. Pavitram. Dharmyam, it is in conformity with dharma. When you study Aparavidya, it's possible to do a dharmic life. You cannot do that here. Study of Paravidya means a person will 100% conform to dharma. Dharmyam. Dharmam. Susukham. That's a little bit exaggeration. Susukham means easy to understand. It's not easy to understand, as we shall see in verses 3, 4 and 5 and 6. But it is a way of encouraging students to become interested in the subject. If you right away say it's very difficult, then many will be discouraged. At the beginning, if you say, oh, this is going to be very difficult, then many people will not have the motivation, they may drop out, they may lose interest. But you should encourage the students. Susukham, it's easy. Sri Krishna makes it easy. Other scriptures like Upanishads, Brahma Sutra, they are very difficult. They are really difficult to understand, especially Brahma Sutra. But Gita is the easiest one. Vedanta as presented in the Gita is the simplest, easiest presentation. It's very interesting and easy to follow. Many of the things, practical hints are given there, like equanimity in pain and pleasure, remaining calm in under all circumstances, and remaining unaffected by kama, krodha, etc. Those are things that we can practice. Practical hints are given in the Gita. Susukham, easy to understand. Kartum susukham, easy to follow. Avyayam, it is imperishable, does not change. Whereas some branches of Aparavidya, they change. As new discoveries reveal new things, older understanding is replaced by new understanding, better understanding. But there is no such thing here. Atman, the nature of Atman does not change. It is always, it never changes, unchanging, changeless, avyayam, imperishable. There is no change in Paravidya. Aparavidya may change. Somebody reads history and somebody revises it and writes in a different way in the light of new research and discoveries. So the old knowledge is modified and new knowledge comes, replaced by more finer understanding. That does not happen in Paravidya. It is avyaya, imperishable. For always nature self remains the same. So that is the benefit of studying this branch of knowledge, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam. Then we go to verse number 3. See, still the same topic, encouraging Arjuna to become more interested in the study of this topic. Ashraddhadhana Purusha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Aprapyamam Nivartante Mrityu Samsara Vartmani. Ashraddhadhana. Shraddha means faith. Unless we have faith, you can't accomplish anything. When you start for work in the morning, start your car to go to work, you should have faith that everything will work out properly. Otherwise, you will not be able to go. How do you know that you will reach your destination safely? So then you can't even travel. You should have faith. Everything will work out properly. 99.9% it will work out properly. So that faith is necessary. Here Shraddha in Vedantic context, Shraddha means, it is defined nicely in Viveka Chudamani. Shastrasya Guruvakyasya Satya Buddhyavadharana. Whatever the scriptures means not all scriptures. Puranas and Mahabharata, Ramayana, those are also scriptures, but we don't depend upon them for actual facts. There may be exaggerations and embellishments and interpolations, not in the Upanishads. Upanishad is the main scripture for Vedanta. There are three scriptures called Prasthanatrayam. You must have heard that expression Prasthanatrayam regarding scriptures of Vedanta. The first of them is called Upanishad. They contain the direct experience of the sages, based on their experience, revelations of the sages, and that has not been tampered with. That is the main source for Vedanta study. Whatever is explained in the Upanishad is simplified and presented in the Bhagavad Gita. This is called Smriti Prasthana. Bhagavad Gita is a simpler presentation of the truths explained in the Upanishads. Sarvopanishado gavo dogdha gopala nandanaha partho vatsas sudhir bhokta dugdham Gita-mritam mahati. This is one of the shlokas in the Gita Mahatmyam, Gita Dhyana shloka. The beginning of Gita, some people will chant these 10-11 verses, Gita Dhyana. This comes there. The Upanishad, Sara, essence of all the Upanishads is presented succinctly, clearly, in simple language in the Bhagavad Gita. And Partha, Arjuna is the beneficiary. Like the calf, he gets the milk from the mother cow. So, like Arjuna, we are all the beneficiaries. We are all benefiting from the Gita. So, it is the main scripture, Upanishad Gita. But there is another third one, scripture for Vedanta, it's Brahma Sutra. Badarayana Vyasa composed 555 something number of sutras, aphorisms. Those are logical interpretations of the statements made in the Upanishads, substantiating on the basis of logic and also refuting all other opposing schools of thought like Buddhism, Jainism, Charvaka and all other branches. Vyasa refutes them. So that is very difficult to study. But this Gita is not like this one. Susukham, so easy to understand. Kartum abhyayam. So Shraddha must be there. Coming back to verse number 3, one must have faith that if I study Bhagavad Gita or Upanishads, I will get the benefit of self-knowledge. The Bhagavad Gita or Upanishad, they depict the ultimate truth. That Shraddha must be there. Otherwise, why would we be motivated to study any of the scriptures if you don't have the Shraddha? And second thing is Guru Vakyam. Whatever the illumined Guru says, that depicts the truth. An illumined Guru will not say anything which is not in conformity with the truth. That conviction must be there. Two things. A firm conviction that what the scriptures, Gita, Upanishad, they depict, and what the illumined teacher says based on experience, they are the truths. And if I follow them, I will also reach the same goal as the teacher. That feeling is called Shraddha. That faith is called Shraddha. Shraddhadana Purushaha Asya Dharmasya. In this Dharma, in this Paravidya, those who have faith, those Purusha means people, O Parantapa Arjuna, those who do not have Shraddha, Ashraddhadana. See the letter A before Shraddha, that means those who do not have faith in the scriptures and the words of the teacher, Ashraddhadana. Shraddhadana means those who have faith. Here it is Ashraddha, those who don't have faith, then they won't even study properly, then they will not put it into practice because they don't believe in it. That will not take us anywhere. We will stay where we are, stagnant in worldly life. Ashraddhadanaha Purushaha Asya Dharmasya. What happens to them? Mam aprapya, not reaching me. Aprapya, the suffix a, the prefix a means opposite. Prapya means gaining, reaching. Aprapya means not reaching me. Mam aprapya, not reaching me. Mrityu samsara vartmani nivartante. Vartman is the path. Mrityu samsara vartmani. They come back to the path of samsara, transmigration, birth and death and birth and death. Mrityu, death. They will fall back into that one. If they don't have faith in the teachings of the Paravidya that Sri Krishna is going to explain in this chapter, Asya Dharmasya, Mam aprapya. Ashraddhadana means those who don't have faith. Not reaching me, Mam aprapya, not reaching me, nivartante, they will go back to the same world, to call him Ashashvatam, as he said in the previous chapter 8:15. So that is, we don't want to dwell on this because this is for those who don't have faith. But we have faith, so we shall not dwell much on this one. Now we go to the real crux of this chapter. 3 verses, 4, 5 and 6. So let us study this carefully because it is not easy to understand. This is a little bit guhya, mysterious. There are opposite kind of things are mentioned. So we should not be confused. Let us try to study and understand clearly as much as possible. So verse number 4. Verse number 4 and 5 can be studied together. Let us do verse number 4. Maya tatamidam sarvam जगदव्यक्तमूर्तिना मत्स्थानि सर्वभूतानि न चाहं तेष्वस्थितः. 9.4 idam sarvam jagat maya tatam. Idam means this, sarvam means all, jagat means world, this whole world, whatever you are experiencing through our senses, the whole universe, creation. Idam sarvam jagat maya means by me, tatam means is pervaded, this whole world is pervaded by me. That is the first line. By whom? Me means Bhagavan, the Lord, Brahman. And how is he pervading? Maya avyakta murtina. This whole universe is pervaded by me in my unmanifest form. Avyakta means, as you saw before in chapter 8, avyakta means in my unmanifest form. In his manifest form, he has a limited personality. Manifest form means with a name and form. For example, see Rama, Ramnami is coming now. Rama is a personality. He is one single individual. Sita, Lakshmana, they are there. So he is manifest. He has a personality, he has a qualities, he is a Purushottama, his good thing, good nature, all those things. That is manifest, we can see, you can study and understand. But he is not pervading in that form. Avyakta murti, in unmanifest form. Unmanifest means not visible to sense organs or the mind. There is nothing. It's like pure consciousness. As pure consciousness. Brahman is pure consciousness. There's a famous Mahavakya in the Upanishad. It says, Prajnanam Brahma. Brahman is Prajnanam, pure consciousness. Not material in nature, not Vyakta, not manifest. Pure consciousness. So how can you see pure consciousness? Not is unmanifest. As pure consciousness, Avyakta Murtina, by me, in my unmanifest form, I am pervading the whole universe. That's the first line. Idam sarvam jagat maya avyakta murtina tatam. Tatam means pervaded. That is easy to understand. Then second line, verse number 4 we are doing. Matsthani sarva bhutani. Sarva bhutani means all the beings, without any exception, are in me. Matsthani, they are in me. All the beings are in me, he is saying. All the beings means what? In commentary it says, Brahmadistamba paryantani. From the creator Brahma is a entity, one personality, Brahma. Not Supreme Brahman, Brahma, the creator, who changes in every kalpa. At the beginning of every cycle of creation, new Brahma comes and start the creation, then he rules it for some time, so many thousands and thousands of yugas, then he retires and another Brahma occupies. These are all positions. All the gods and goddesses, they are positions, like Indra and Surya, all these things are limited in time. They occupy the position, and then when their tenure ends, they will go to Brahmaloka and achieve liberation. Another jiva comes and takes the place. They are not permanent. Like the position of the President of the United States. Every 4 years you have to be re-elected. Only twice you can be re-elected. 2 terms only. Term limit is there. Even afterwards you have to retire. Like that, these positions of Brahma, etc., they have a term limit. After finishing their one cycle, very long cycle, kalpa means millions of years, billions of years, then they retire. Achieve liberation, merge in Brahman, then another jiva comes and occupies the position. So from that position of Brahma, which is the highest anybody can achieve, there is nothing higher than that. Brahmadi stamba paryantani. Stamba means a blade of grass. That means the whole creation, encompassing everything. All this whole creation, sarva bhutani, Matsthani sarvabhutani, they are all present in me, they are contained in me. Matsthani means they exist in me, with me as their self. Not like this cup of, in this cup of water, the cup is there, water is there in the cup. Not like that. The water is contained in the cup. Not in that way, physical sense. This all pure consciousness, there is no container, all pure consciousness. Everything is included in it, and pure consciousness is self of everything. That will study in this 10th chapter. The most important part of any being is the self within, presence of pure consciousness pervading it. If that is removed, then the rest is matter. Matter is perishable. You take the human body, is all matter, chemicals, bones and flesh and everything, they are made of food. And then, by themselves, they are not independent, they can't function. There must be something else to make it alive and function. What is that? The presence of the divine. And how is it present? Not visible, avyakta murti. God's presence within me, which makes me alive person, living person, it is not visible. It's avyakta. So God is present in me in an invisible form, avyakta. But He is present. If He is not present, I will not be here speaking. I will be dead body. Matter perishes. In the same way, the whole universe, all the beings from Brahma down to the blade of grass, all beings are pervaded by the Supreme Reality Brahman in His unmanifest form, avyakta murtina. They are contained in me, matsthani sarvabhutani, but not in a physical sense, because God is not a container. Pure consciousness is all pervading. There is no, it's not a very big cup or something. It is pure consciousness. It's not a container. But they seem to be in the universe, in Brahman, because Brahman is their innermost essence. Everything. A blade of grass also has the presence of God in it. Otherwise it will dry and wither away. Matsthani sarvabhutani, they exist in me as their self, as their very self. Without me as itself, no being can exist. Now that is, up to this it is clear. Then in last part of verse number 4, Nachaham teshu avasthitaha. Teshu, in all the beings. Teshu means locative plural of the pronoun it. In all of these beings, from Brahma down to the blade of grass, teshu, in all these beings, aham na avasthitaha. This is important. I am not contained in them. God is not contained, limited to any being. He is present everywhere. Without being also God is present. They are not contained in the beings alone. Supposing like space is a good example. In this room there is space. And all the things are in this space. But space is not contained in any of them, not limited to any of them. Space is outside also, even if there is no building, space is there. Like that, somewhat like that. Pure consciousness is present everywhere, not limited to the beings, not contained in them, in an enclosed area, in enclosed sense. All pervasive. That's the nature of reality. It's hard to describe in words because it is indescribable, avyakta. That's why they struggle with the words. So we will continue in the next verse. There can be no real relationship between the real self Brahman, which is pure consciousness, and all the beings which are matter. There can be relationship between two material objects. For example, water is material, cup is material, and water is contained in the cup. Cup is a container. So these two material things can be related to each other, container, content. But In the case of ultimate reality, Brahman, it is not matter, it is pure consciousness, present everywhere. It is no name and form, not limited. And the things from Brahma down to the grass are all material in nature. So there cannot be no true relationship. And that relationship is there, but it cannot be put in words. It is not a container-contained relationship, as in the case of two material things. That's why this is difficulty. This becomes clear in the next verse. I am not affected by them. In the case of the container content, supposing there is a earthen or wooden container, and you put a very toxic chemical, that chemical affects the container. Content affects the container. In the case of Brahman and the beings, there is no such effect. One cannot affect the other. The material, the beings cannot affect Brahman. Brahman is the essence of all those things. See, that is the mystery of creation. We will see in the next verse, verse number 5. Nacha matstani bhutani pashya me yogamaishwaram bhuta brahna cha bhutastho mamatma bhuta bhavanaha. Nacha matstani bhutani. It seems to be exactly opposite of what I said in the previous verse. Matstani sarvabhutani. Then he says exactly opposite. Nacha matstani bhutani. Here, the real meaning is the container, the created beings, Brahma to the blade of all the created beings which are material in nature, Brahma and everything down to the blade of grass, exist in me as the water exists in a mirage. It seems to be there, but it is not there. Because these beings are all perceived beings. They are not absolutely real. From the absolute point of view, the whole world is unreal. Jagan Mithya. If it is unreal, how can it exist in anything? So we are talking of an unreal thing and a real thing, between which there can be no true content-container relationship, cannot be there. But it appears to be there. How? Some examples are given. A snake appears to be in a rope. A snake is a perceived object. It is not really there at all. The whole world is like the snake in that example. Rope is a real object. Rope is present. It is the real object. Snake is perceived in the rope. That is a perceived object. It is not really, not real. In the same way, Brahman alone is there. Pure consciousness cannot be seen or cannot be known by the senses. The world is perceived in Brahman. So we think it is there in it. We think the snake is in the rope. That is the confusion. There is no such thing at all. There can be no true relationship between a perceived imaginary world and the ultimate reality Brahman, which is avyakta, unmanifest. But it seems to be there. How? Example, snake and rope, mirage and water. Supposing you are traveling along a interstate highway, at a distance you see as if there is water there. But when you go to that point, the water is receded. There was no water there. So it appears to be there, but it is not there. The world is like that. It appears to be there, but we are experiencing it. The snake is, though it is imaginary, it produces the same effect as a real snake. The world is like that, imaginary, Jagan Mithya, but it has all the effects of a real object, like the snake, creates a fear. Supposing I don't know it is a rope, I am seeing the snake, and I believe it is a snake, and I become afraid. I yell and scream, snake, snake, somebody come. If I know it is imaginary, I won't become afraid, but it is appears to be so real that it is real for me, the perceiver. World is like that. The world which has so much of suffering and happiness also is there. People enjoy married life and children, grandchildren, money, wealth and everything. Lot of suffering is also there. This appears to be so real. We really experience good and bad, pain and pleasure. But from the absolute point of view, there is no such thing as pain and pleasure. As we study Viveka Chudamani, all this is in our minds. The world itself is not there. It seems to be there. Creates the same effect as the real object. So that is why this confusion. Nachamasthani bhutani. 5th verse. Nor the created beings, Brahma, etc., dwell in me, all the whole universe. They seems to dwell in me like a snake seems to dwell in the rope. It produces same effect as real snake. Really it is not there. Nachamasthani bhutani. That we say. Pashyame yogamaishwaram. And the pure consciousness, Brahman, is not affected by the world. The world has a lot of good and bad. The jivas are affected, but Brahman is not affected, though it seems to be in him. Like the rope is not affected by the snake. The snake does not bite the rope. The rope is not afraid of the snake. People are afraid of the snake, we are saying it. But the rope itself is unaffected. You stick is a rope or snake or whatever you see it as, the rope is rope. It is not affected by the world. Brahman is not affected. Nachamarstani bhutani. I am unaffected by the beings. Because there is a very famous 2 statements in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. I think it's Yajnavalkya, I don't know who says, he says Brahman is unattached, cannot be affected by anything. Pure consciousness. You can make it big or small. Nayanam chindanti shastrani. Second, in the earlier chapter we studied, Nayanam dahati pavakaha. So it cannot be affected by the world. So that's what is said here. Nachamarstani bhutani ayam purusha asangaha. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says. This purusha means Brahman. Asanga is unattached. Cannot have any connection with anything because pure consciousness. If 2 material things can have connection with each other, one can be content, one can affect the other. One person can affect the other person because both are material. But Brahman is unaffected by anything. Ayam Purusha Asangaha is totally unattached. Sangha means attached. Totally unattached. It cannot be attached to anything. Pure consciousness. How can you be attached to anything? There is no other thing to be attached to. Asangoyam Purusha. Then it says, Asango nahi sajjate. Because he is unattached, pure consciousness, he cannot become attached to anything, cannot be affected by anything. Like the rope is not affected by the snake. In that way. Dream objects and events are not real, but they seem as real. Another example is the dream. In dream, so many things, so many people come and go, good things happen, bad things happen, we laugh and we cry. But when we wake up, nobody was there, nothing happened. The world is like a dream. This world is, some people, one school of thought think the world is like a dream, and whatever happens appears to be real when you are experiencing it. But when you wake up from this waking state to Turiya state, then we realize, what world? I thought I was a Swami in America, and I suffered, I enjoyed. There is no such thing happened. I have always been Brahman, I am also Brahman. Nothing happened. Nobody came, nobody went. Like a dream tiger. The tiger comes in the dream, you become afraid, I yell and scream, tiger, tiger. But when I wake up, I know tiger was not there. Though it was real when I was dreaming, it was real. Then I did not know it was a dream. The world is like this. So there can be no real relationship. Pashyame yogamaya, look at my glory. Aishvara means the power of Maya, which is a power of Brahman, that creates this whole illusion. World, people, good, bad, suffering, enjoyment. Nothing is there, only Brahman is there. So how can there be any relationship which is non-existent object and reality? Pashyame yogamaishwaram. So my divine power, glory, which makes us see this world as real, this is because of my infinite glory, Aishwaram. And then the next line, in verse number 5, Bhuta Bhrit. Bhuta Bhrit means I am the sustainer of all the beings as their innermost self. If God is not there, Brahman is not there, nothing can exist. Even this inanimate object cannot exist unless Brahman is there. That's the essence of everything. One who supports or sustains everything, that is Brahman, Bhuta Bhrat. However, Nacha Bhutastaha, I am not contained in them. This pure consciousness cannot be contained in material objects like this one. It is infinite, this is finite. Infinite cannot be contained in the finite. Nacha Bhutastaha, I am not present in the beings as a container content. Mamatma Bhuta Bhavanaha. Mamatma means my Atman, that means me. There is no separate God and his Atma. Mama means I, that speaking, Brahman. I am the Bhuta Bhavanaha. I am the source of everything. Bhuta Bhavanaha means I am the source of everything. Unless Brahman is there, world cannot be there. Unless rope is there, snake cannot be there. But rope and snake are not connected in any way. See, this is the Yoga Maheshwaram. This is the interesting part of chapter 9. So we should deeply think about this topic. This is called Rajaguhya. It appears easy, but he says Kartum Susakam. It's not Susakam. If you are not prepared, we cannot understand that one. So this is verse number 5. And then verse number 6 is a simpler one. It's a restatement of the same thing. You can finish that one too. Then the topic changes after verse number 6. Yathakasha sthito nityam vayus sarvatra go mahan tatha sarvani bhutani matsthanetyupadharaya. Upadharaya, last word means, please understand, Arjuna, Sri Krishna is saying to Arjuna, understand, yatha vayuhu mahan vayuhu sarvatragaha akasha sthitaha nityam. Nitya means always. Yatha means as. Mahan vayuhu, the great wind. It's called Mahan because it's all powerful. Wind is so powerful that when it comes, everything in its way is smashed, destroyed. So Mahan Vayu, the great Vayu, Mahan means vast expanse, everywhere it is there. Mahan Vayu, Sarvatraga means everywhere it is present. Mahan means great, very powerful. The Vayu means wind, which is very powerful, Mahan, and Sarvatra is always present everywhere. Wherever you go, wind is there, air is there. Sarvatra gacchati iti sarvatragaha. Nityam, always. Akasha sthitaha is present in Akasha, space. Wind is present in space, but wind does not affect this space. Space cannot be affected one way or the other. When the wind comes powerfully, space does not move. Everything in the space moves, but space remains unaffected. In the same way, all the beings are there in the universe, but they don't affect Brahman, who seems to contain them. But there is no container-content relationship, as we saw before. Just as the vast expanse of air eternally subsists in space, always present in space, where can it go? Wind is in space. Nityam akasha sthitaha. Wind is present always in space. Tatha, in the same way, sarvani bhutani matsthani. All the beings are in me. Restatement of the same thing. That verse came in verse number 4 and 5. All the beings are in me. The snake is in the rope, but really not there in the rope. It's not there at all, but it seems to be there in the rope. If rope was not there, the snake would not be there. It is a substratum. In the same way, Brahman is a substratum for the whole universe. Universe itself can be unreal from the absolute point of view, but real from the empirical point of view. For us, world is real. I cannot say world is unreal because I am in pain and pleasure. I am seeing other people. But if I go to the turiya state of consciousness, whole world which was so real never existed, like dream. Dream is real when I am experiencing it. When I wake up, from the waking state point of view, whatever happened in the dream did not happen. Nobody came, nobody went, no tiger, no robber. This world is like this. See, this is Agashwaram. This is the mystery. This way it's called Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam. So this is a very interesting topic. This Mandika Upanishad describes the unreality of the world. There is one school of thought, the world doesn't even exist. So other school of thoughts, the world exists like a dream only. So like different views are there. All these different views are from the empirical point of view. People perceive things differently. But from the absolute point of view, when you go to the absolute state of existence where there is no other, then what world? Nothing was there, nothing was there. So the goal is to go to that state. As long as we get stuck in this empirical state, suffering is inevitable. That is why a few months ago I gave a Sunday talk. The title of the talk was Where There Is No Other. That's from Chandogya Upanishad. The moment we pursue the other, then we are open to misery. Dvitiyadvai bhayam bhavati, Brahmanica Upanishad says. Then what is that state where we are totally free from suffering, all limitations? That state of existence where there is no other object, second object to be seen, to be heard, to be perceived, to be seen, to deal with. That is the state. It is called Bhuman in Chandogya Upanishad. Bhumaiva Sukham, that Bhuman, unity consciousness where there is no second object to be perceived. That alone is Sukha. Nalpe Sukhamasti. Alpa means limited. What is limited? Yanmartyam tadalpam. Whatever comes and goes, it is limited and that cannot give happiness. So if you want true happiness, lasting happiness, unconditional happiness, infinite happiness, we have to go to that state of awareness where there is no other. The moment other comes, you are open to problem. What is the other? Even if you think, you see the body, then that is the other object. If you experience your body, my body is happy, my body is well, my body is sick, then you are already in the state of duality. Only Atman. Body is also a foreign object, not the Atman, other than the Atman, the body. Only Atman, when only Atman remains, if you are in the state of only Atman awareness, not even the body is there, nobody is there, my body is not there, no other body is there. That state of unity consciousness, pure consciousness, that alone can give lasting happiness. Bhumaiva Sukham, Sanat Kumara says to Narada. That is the state. The moment we depart from the state and descend to the state of duality, then we are vulnerable to all kinds of problems. Somebody else said to bother us, somebody else said to make me happy. My body is the object, but I am not the body, but I think I am the body. That's my ignorance. All this is due to ignorance of my true nature. If I know that I am the Brahman, ultimate reality, Aham Brahmasmi, if I know that from experience, then there is no problem. There is nothing else to be afraid of. But I perceive the duality in the waking state. That's why all sufferings come. All suffering is due to ignorance of one divine nature, one's true nature. That is the conclusion to be drawn from these 3 verses. It's not mentioned in that way in the text, but that is the indication. That's the intent. So let us stop here, and from verse 7 onwards, a simpler, easier topic comes, which has already come in the 8th chapter, the cyclic nature of creation that we studied, and that will come again. We will do that next time. Let us say the closing prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may all be happy, may all be free from suffering, diseases and other suffering. May all realize what is noble and auspicious and dharmic. May no one be subject to misery. Home peace. May there be peace and joy in our hearts. Adhyatmika Shanti. May there be peace and harmony amongst all beings. Adibhautika Shanti. May there be peace everywhere in nature. Adi Daivika Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. All of you stay well, and God willing we shall see next week.